Most people watched this press conference and moved on to the next political spectacle. Nobody caught the specific, orchestrated trap that Jimmy Kimmel had quietly laid in the final 9 minutes. By midnight, 3 major networks had cut into their regular late-night programming to discuss the absolute dismantling that had just occurred on live television. By morning, the segment had been viewed 19 million times, completely rewriting the rules of how comedians handle executive power. All of it started because one man assumed an official podium could shield him from the consequences of his own words. The atmospheric pressure inside the El Capitan Entertainment Center feels entirely wrong for a standard comedy monologue, the air hanging heavy, thick, and undeniably electric. The brilliant studio lights push 2 stops brighter than rehearsal, washing the iconic desk in an unforgiving, clinical illumination that bleaches the usual warmth from the audience. Jimmy Kimmel is already positioned at his mark, his posture perfectly still, his eyes scanning the room with the quiet, absolute control of an apex predator completely comfortable in his domain. The floor director stands in the shadows near the band, his headset pushed entirely off his ear, realizing the standard run of show has been quietly shredded by the host. There is no gentle bass line playing underneath his opening remarks, no polite industry chatter. The complete absence of sound acts as a suffocating physical presence. Donald Trump's entrance into the narrative happens not in person, but through a massive digital projection, his power attempting to claim the territory of the studio from 1,000 miles away. The screen behind Kimmel flickers to life, displaying Trump at a recent, highly publicized press briefing following a national tragedy. The moment his image appears, he spreads his arms wide over the presidential podium, physically expanding his footprint to own every possible inch of the camera's frame. His eyes lock onto the press pool with a flat, unwavering superiority, a gaze designed to shrink any critical presence in his own briefing room. He leans immediately into the microphone, delivering his opening line with a smirk heavily disguised as casual dominance. "I was told this country was grieving, but quite frankly, we have bigger, more beautiful things to focus on right now." He launches directly into a relentless verbal barrage on the video feed, stacking his attacks in a deliberate rhythm designed to overwhelm the acoustic space of the briefing room. "Without me running the economy, nobody would even be talking about the new White House ballroom we just broke ground on," he projects, his voice echoing sharply off the briefing room's acoustic paneling. He pivots seamlessly to a deeply personal dismissal, waving a hand dismissively at a reporter asking about the recent tragedy, calling the line of questioning a failing, overrated partisan attempt to distract from his architectural achievements. He claims total authority over the environment, loudly reminding the silent reporters that he dictates the national mood, runs the country, and certainly does not need a lecture on empathy from the fake news media. People tune in because they want absolute winners, and quite frankly, nobody has ever built a ballroom like the one I am building right now, he concludes, crossing his arms definitively. Through this entire recorded onslaught, Jimmy Kimmel stays completely, terrifyingly silent on stage. He simply watches the monitor, his expression an unreadable mask of absolute calculation. A prominent network executive in the 3rd row nervously adjusts his collar, the collective tension in the room becoming a physical weight. The silence stretches out, turning Trump's booming rhetoric on the screen into a hollow echo chamber of his own profound insecurity. Then, Kimmel finally moves. He shifts his weight slightly, leaning toward the camera, and when he speaks, his voice drops significantly lower, entirely devoid of his usual late-night projection. "You keep talking about winners, but the first thing you did was try to shut down a question about grief to talk about chandeliers. That's not leadership. That's a failed audition." The studio instantly goes dead quiet, the air freezing in the lungs of every single attendee. The massive production screen behind him shifts, bypassing the show's glossy graphics package to play a raw, unedited audio clip from Trump's hot mic moments before the press conference began. It captures Trump explicitly asking an aide if the ballroom announcement would successfully drown out the negative coverage of the tragedy. Displayed here in stark, high-definition silence, the buried recording lands like a physical blow to the concept of presidential empathy. Kimmel does not raise his voice. He simply asks a devastating question about how a man claiming absolute strength relies on the inventory of shiny distractions to mask his total inability to lead. Trump's immediate response on social media, triggered the moment the broadcast hits the East Coast feed, is a loud denial of the audio's context, calling it doctored, fake news manufactured by a failing comedian. Kimmel counters calmly on live television, letting the digital denial hang in the dead air for a brutal 5-second pause before he quietly signals the control booth. A low murmur ripples through the audience, a collective realization that the host is not backing down a single inch. Kimmel reaches slowly beneath his desk, moving with the deliberate precision of a surgeon operating on an exposed nerve. He places a plain manila folder on the surface, opening it to reveal certified architectural blueprints and invoices for the ballroom, all dated and signed on the exact morning the national tragedy occurred. The camera pushes in tight on the document, an undeniable physical manifestation of the administration's twisted priorities. The screen behind him shifts again, displaying a meticulously documented timeline connecting the exact minute the tragedy broke on the news networks to a simultaneous aggressive surge in emails demanding the ballroom press release be expedited. Trump's digital surrogates try to talk over the visual evidence online, their rhetoric rising in pitch as they dismiss the timeline as a desperate partisan hoax. Kimmel slows his cadence down even further on stage, forcing the room to absorb the sheer weight of the verified timestamps. The tension in the studio is so thick it feels actively dangerous. A second raw audio recording suddenly overrides the house sound system. It is a captured voicemail left on a campaign server just minutes after the press conference. Trump's own voice, stripped of equalization, explicitly ordering a communications director to threaten ABC executives over Kimmel's anticipated coverage. The audience is physically hit by the recording, a collective, sharp intake of breath vibrating through the stadium seating. Trump posts frantically that the audio is illegally obtained and heavily spliced by deep state operatives. Kimmel does not argue. He simply displays the digital forensic verification from an independent cybersecurity firm on the main screen, proving the file is entirely, unequivocally unaltered. A door near the stage left curtain opens, and two individuals walk slowly into the spotlight. The first is a former digital campaign staffer, a young man whose testimony is entirely procedural, detailing exactly how he was ordered to scrub negative comments from the White House feeds and amplify the ballroom praise. "I rehearsed walking away 6 times in the parking garage before I finally found the courage to quit," the staffer admits, his voice shaking but remarkably controlled. Trump aggressively attacks the young man's credibility online, yelling that he was fired for gross incompetence and is simply looking for a quick book deal. The staffer absorbs the digital assault by standing perfectly still on stage, his physical presence magnifying Trump's absolute desperation. Then, the second witness steps to the microphone. She was a senior communications assistant, a woman forced to draft the official press release about the ballroom while completely ignoring the national grieving process, all under the suffocating weight of a strict non-disclosure agreement. Her testimony is emotionally devastating, detailing the intense isolation and the profound personal cost of enforcing a public distraction to protect a fragile ego. Her throat works visibly before the words finally come, her fingers gripping the microphone stand until her knuckles are entirely colorless, a tear slipping down her cheek without her wiping it away. Trump posts furiously, his digital tone flushed dark red, shouting that she is a traitor betraying the loyalty of the administration. The assistant looks directly into the camera, her voice breaking but laced with absolute titanium. "Fear doesn't age well. It turns into something heavier, and I'm done carrying it." The audience does not cheer or scream. They break. One person in the front row stands up, clapping slowly. Another joins. Within seconds, the room is consumed by a slow, deliberate wave of applause, not for the late-night host, but for the truth finally breathing in the open. The main screen splits in half, displaying the domestic metadata timeline on the left and on the right, matching internal network logs, proving the administration's direct attempts to block Kimmel from discussing the tragedy. The alignment is absolute and undeniable. Trump's online denials shift frantically from screaming fake news to yelling that the servers were illegally hacked, a desperate pivot that exposes the sheer, naked panic beneath his anger. His digital collapse unfolds across multiple, undeniable metrics. The frequency of his posts becomes heavily erratic, his rhetoric rising and falling in rapid, shallow bursts of capitalization. His arguments, previously gripping a semblance of executive authority, begin wiping frantically at the narrative, attempting to claim he was deeply moved by the tragedy all along. His digital posture slumps inward, his broad threats stiffening and shrinking as he leans away from the visual evidence of the massive, unedited timeline dominating the trending topics. His focus darts aggressively around the platform, refusing to settle on Kimmel, the witnesses, or the raw blueprints, eventually going completely, terrifyingly silent. His verbal progression spirals from confident denial to accusing Kimmel of an illegal ambush, dropping into a procedural complaint about FCC broadcast rules, attempting a weak burst of bravado about his poll numbers, and finally landing in total, absolute quiet. Kimmel looks directly into the camera, his expression entirely neutral. This started with your words. It ends with your silence. And your silence is the loudest thing in this room. Trump's feed remains completely still. The aftermath escapes the studio like a controlled detonation. Backstage, the veteran network executives stand completely frozen, their phones lighting up as they watch the online metrics in stunned disbelief. Trump's lead communications aide is seen typing so frantically on his phone that autocorrect sends pure nonsense to the press pool for 3 straight messages. Within 8 minutes, the first unauthorized clip of the monologue hits the internet. Within 20 hours, the full, unedited segment reaches 19 million views, each click spreading at viral velocity. Cable news networks immediately cut into their programming, their graphics departments frantically rebuilding the timeline of the distraction with red arrows and annotations. Anchors replay Kimmel's defiance, allowing his thematic anchor word to sit on the screen for a full segment without adding their own commentary. Trump's counterattack fails to materialize, replaced by a devastating absence from the public conversation. Yet, beneath his previous frantic denials, users reply with screenshots of the exact server logs proving the inventory of his lies. The public shift is instantaneous. People are no longer debating the politics of the press conference. They are dissecting the psychology of an administration whose entire facade shattered on live television. The assistant's testimony about fear becomes a global caption, trending worldwide as the definitive summary of the night. The story does not end with a sudden confession or a reversed policy. It burns slow, a digital fire that cannot be contained by late-night executive orders or legal threats. Because an inventory built on distractions only holds until someone finally refuses to look away. If this changed how you see power, hit subscribe. If it didn't, watch it again. The details you missed the first time are the ones that matter most. Notifications on. Next one drops soon.